Welcome back to Middle East Unfiltered, where we go beyond the headlines to explore the people, cultures, and stories shaping the region. Today, we're joined once again by Giulia Hazima, an Israeli Druze educator, researcher, and advocate, to talk about the Druze community in Lebanon. With deep knowledge of Druze history, culture, and politics, Giulia will help us understand their unique identity, the challenges they face in today's Lebanon, and how regional dynamics, including developments in Israel, impact their lives. Let's get into it. Hi, Giulia. It's really a pleasure to have you again.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's an honor having me again and being on your podcast.
Julia, before we get to speak about the Druze in Lebanon, I'd like to ask you if there has been any updates since our last podcast regarding the Druze and Syria.
So, yes, the last update that we have is a statement made by His Eminence, Sheikh Hikmat al Hajri, which is the same statement as His Eminence Sheikh Muwaffaq Tarif. Both Druze leaders actually demand the return of abductees and humanitarian aid for Sueda, opening a safe corridor for Druze aid convoys, and to have a humanitarian corridor also be open, and enforcing a ceasefire, lifting the siege, and to act now instead of watching from the sideline.
I think it was 2 days ago, the leader of the Druze in Sueda in Syria, he stated that they are demanding to split from the central government in Syria and an established independent entity. Can you
Yes.
elaborate on this one?
Yes, indeed. So Sheikh Hikmat al-Hajri made a statement yesterday and even today, as far as I know, demanding the release of all the hostages, as Sheikh Muwaffaq Tarif also demanded from the international community. And he also demanded a full withdrawal from all the occupied territories, the villages that we talked about in Suwaida. And also, Sheikh Hikmat al Hajari made a very provocative statement to the Syrian regime that they want an independent state. So, a week ago, we saw many protests in Suwaida and Sahat al Karama, the Karama headquarters, let's say, demanding to be independent and not related to the Syrian regime.
When we talk about Druze, we talk about Israeli Druze, Syrian Druze. Why haven't we heard a thing about the Druze in Lebanon?
We have several factors that might explain this. When we talk about the Druze in Syria and the Druze in Lebanon, and not mention the Druze in Lebanon, there's a reason behind that that not all of us also talk about it for obvious reasons, politics. So as we know, Israel doesn't have any diplomatic relations with Syria and Lebanon. But now things are changing regarding what's happening in Syria, fortunately, in southern Syria specifically. And in Lebanon, it's different. Why so? In Lebanon, regarding all the prestigious identity that I talked about before, we have a leader there that is ruling over all the Druze community. And unfortunately, not many can express their opinions to us, even the Israeli Druze, as they would like. They don't live under democracy, unfortunately, and hence we don't have this kind of opportunity to know what's really concerning them regarding every aspect regarding Israel or Syria or the whole Middle East. So at this point, we might refrain from intervening in their politics. And we also ask them not to get involved in our politics. This has been always the agreement, let's say, between both parties. You have Eminence Sheikh Muwaffaq Tarif and you have Walid Jumbla in Lebanon. And both of them have opposing opinions regarding many things. Hence, we try our best not to get involved in their political decisions. And we also expect from them not to get involved in our political decisions. And at this point, we don't have this communication with the Lebanese Druze. I don't know if all of you know, but in Lebanon, because they went through many obligations throughout the whole wars they have been to, they are not allowed to communicate with any Israeli here, whether Druze, Jew, Christian, Muslim, as long as they are, as they call us, Al-Azraq, Zuruk, the blue ones, because of our flag and the passports that we hold, the color is blue. We lost this understanding between us. We lost this connection. And hence, they don't talk about us. We don't talk about them. Because if we do, it's not going to be butterflies, let's say.
The Druze community in Lebanon has a long and complex history. Could you give us some background on their cultural and religious identity and how it has shaped their role in Lebanese society?
So that's an interesting question. The Druze community in Lebanon has a very distinctive identity. First, we gotta talk about the Druze community, how it emerged. It emerged in the 11th century, and it's rooted in Ismaili traditions, but developing a distinct faith that emphasizes unity of God, personal responsibility, and also the pursuit of wisdom. In Lebanon, it's very interesting to mention that the Druze there, they have carved out a unique identity, not only as religious group, but as a community bound by loyalty, honor, strong ties to the land. That's why we would hear many Lebanese Jews emphasizing their nationality. They say Lebanon awalan, Lebanon first. So historically, they played a central role in Mount Lebanon's politics. They often also mediated between larger religious groups there and external powers. We have the prince, Fakhruddin al-Mahani, who ruled out over all of Lebanon until here, the Galilee. And he's well known also in Nazareth and his cooperation with the Crusaders to have a peaceful era at the time. And the Druze also in Lebanon, they have their own cultural identity. Since the faith is close to outsiders, it's a secretive faith. We don't often talk about our religion, but culturally, we would love to share as much as we can. So the faith is not to be discussed, but the cultural aspect regarding the Druze community in Lebanon allowed them to survive as a small minority there in a very diverse region, more than here in Israel. One of the main factors to maintain the Druze identity, whether in Lebanon, in Israel, or in Syria, is to preserve the brotherhood, your own brethren across the borders, and also to marry within the community. Along the history, unfortunately, there had been many changes regarding this identity in Lebanon. As far as we know, after the civil war in the 80s in Lebanon, we saw a change in this aspect regarding marrying within the community. And there are some Druze in Lebanon. I don't have exact numbers or percentages, but we hear about it a lot here in Israel regarding them marrying outside of the community. This considered as something critical and very frowned upon by the Druze community, especially if it's a conservative one like us here in Israel. While I think it's not the same in Lebanon because you have many cities that they live in, but not villages as we have here in Israel, where we have only Druze villages. So we can preserve our own identity. This is not the case with all the villages in Lebanon, unfortunately. This also affected the Druze identity and preserving it because once one Druze marry a non-Druze, they are considered a non-Druze. They're no longer a Druze.
So, how are they called?
They would follow their partner's religion or be an atheist. You can't be a Druze once you marry a non-Druze because we don't allow any conversion.
Are there less Druze in Lebanon every year?
After the civil war, many Druze left Lebanon. we had over 400,000 Druze living in Lebanon. Now they are less. There are approximately 250,000 Druze. And when I say Druze, we don't know for sure if they preserved the Druze identity that I talked about. So, as I said before, once you marry non Druze, you are no longer considered a Druze according to our religion. But this is not the case, as far as I know and I understood, in Lebanon. So, I can tell if there are less or more.
The Jews have often been described as a small community with an outsized influence in the Lebanese politics and public life. What factors have contributed to their political importance over the years?
Well, several factors actually explain this influence. First, geography. So the Druze in Lebanon, they settled in the mountainous regions. By the way, all Jews, whether in Israel or in Syria, we all live on mountainous regions. Why so? Because historically we sought protection through the mountains from the enemies that chased us to persecute it. This gave them a natural stronghold and autonomy. And also, the second factor is leadership. So I talked about Emir Fakhruddin the second. So in the 16th century and later, we have Jumblat and Arsalan families, Talal Arsalan and Walid Jumblat, who tried to build their own political agendas that endure to this day, unfortunately. And third, we have adaptability, like they have to adapt to the environment they live in. So the Druze learn to navigate Lebanon's sectarian system because they live in a sectarian system. قوانين الطائف, as they call it in Lebanon, الحكم الطائفي, which I will talk about later on. They try to have their own system by forging strategic alliances while maintaining internal cohesion. So even though they represent under about 10% in Lebanon, their military traditions, social unity, and their political leadership have given them way far beyond their numbers in Lebanon.
Lebanon has faced enormous and political economic crises in recent years. How has the Druze community been affected, and what are some of the key challenges they're dealing with right now?
So, like all Lebanese, the Druze have been heavily affected by the economic collapse and unemployment, the currency devaluation, and the lack of services. These are daily struggles for all Lebanese, not just the Druze. But small communities feel these crises even more strongly because they have fewer safety nets. For the Druze, maintaining social solidarity has been essential regarding where they are located, specifically inside Lebanon. So, through local councils, communal support, and diaspora networks, all these had a major role in this. Politically, they face the challenge of preserving their influence inside the system there, which is increasingly fragile and polarized so far. So, for many Druze families, the key question today is how to ensure dignity and stability for the next generation without being drawn into wider conflict.
So, looking ahead, how do you see the young generation of Druze in Lebanon shaping the future of their community, both culturally and politically?
This question is very delicate. The way I'm seeing it from my own Israeli Druze perspective regarding the youth perspective in Lebanon, the younger generation is both cautious and ambitious. On the one hand, they face real obstacles, economic hardship, immigration pressures, disillusionment with traditional politics regarding their own leader that is ruling over there and the parties that they are affiliated with. There are many, by the way, Druze parties inside Lebanon, which don't have that here in Israel at all. And on the other hand, they are increasingly engaged in education, technology, They also in cultural initiatives that give them new opportunities to redefine their role inside Lebanon. So many young Druze are asking how they can preserve their traditions while also modernizing, like living in the mainstream culture, whether through promoting heritage, strengthening community networks, or participating in national reform movements. So I think the future of the Druze in Lebanon will depend on this balance, holding on to their distinct identity that we talked about, while also stepping into broader Lebanese and regional conversations with confidence. And once they look at their brethren inside Israel and seeing how we shaped our identity, it might influence their perspective on the Druze identity and make them come back to their own roots.
How would you want to see the Druze in Lebanon?
How I want to see the Druze in Lebanon. I want them to be proud of being who they are, first being Druze before anything, because nationality doesn't come first in terms of the Druze beliefs and religion. I want to see them coming back to their roots of the Druze community before anything, to learn how to adapt in their region, but not letting go of their essence, because this is what we're seeing now, that the Druze in Lebanon has lost their essence because of the many corrupted leaders that ruled over there and tried to impact their decisions regarding religion, politics, education, everything. I want them to be free from this corruption and from this oppression, to have their own freedom to choose to be who they are. And also, I want them to stop being afraid to talk to us, connect with your own brethren across the border. Don't be afraid of anything.
Druze in Lebanon, are they being represented in the parliament?
Unfortunately, the political system in Lebanon is very, very sectarian. The system is distributed based on religion. You have the economical department, and you have the agricultural one, and you have the finance one. Each one of them has to be ruled by a specific religion. So, as far as we know, the president of Lebanon has always to be Christian. This is how it is. And the Druze don't have lots of places there to be influencing others, to be honest. Last time I checked, when they had the elections, I think I saw two or three prominent Druze figures in the political system, not more. The rest are actually Shia, Sunni, and Christians. Like they have a restrictive rule that a Sunni can be this and that, but can't be above this status. A Christian, Maronite, whether Orthodox or I don't know how many denominations they have there, but they can be this and that and can't be the other thing, if you understand my point. So the Druze can't be what the Sunnis or Shia or Christians have in this political system.
If I understand correctly, they don't have the same rights.
They don't have the same right. You have a real apartheid.
Do they pay taxes to the country the same as others?
Yeah, this is the same as others.
So they have the same debts, but not the same rights.
Exactly. And yet they call Israel apartheid.
Well, it's a good thing that we have you here to come and talk about it because we rarely hear about Druze in Lebanon. I think this podcast was very eye opening, and I want to thank you, Giulia.
I want to thank you more than anything for giving me this opportunity to talk about a very delicate subject, which not all of us talk about daily. And I hope that we might hear more voices coming from the Lebanese community, whether Druze, Christian, to feel free and open to share their own opinions and let the others know about them.
Well, I hope, one of these days, Druze in Lebanon are going to listen to the podcast.
I hope so too.
Thank you so much, Giulia. I'll see you next week.
Thank you. See you next week.